Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first episode of the Bitcoin Latam Report, where I interview Bitcoiners and entrepreneurs from the Latam region. And the first guest, it's not surprising, it's my co-founder and really best friend, Gustavo Flores. Welcome, Gustavo. Thank you for joining my new podcast.
Hey, Maciej. Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
So I actually didn't mention, but Gustavo is the CEO of Aureo, a Bitcoin platform in Mexico that intends to serve high net worth individuals and corporations in Mexico for everything related to Bitcoin. Can you tell us what was the recent big news for you, Gustavo, well, for us, and how do you feel about it?
Yeah, certainly. So, I feel very great. This is something that I've been working on for months now. And, it just feels great to take it out from within me and to share it with the world. So the first big news is that Swapido has officially rebranded to Aureo. We have a new mission. Our mission is no longer to push Bitcoin as a form of medium of exchange. Although we believe in that vision long term, we think that's not the priority for our market. The priority for our market is to adopt Bitcoin as the default savings technology. And for that to happen in Latin America specifically, we believe that the future of the region can be redefined by adopting Bitcoin in this manner. So, and the second big news, which is probably the biggest, is that Aureo has raised 1.1 million USD dollars pre-seed financing round backed exclusively by Early Riders. Early Riders is a Bitcoin VC associated to the on-ramp Bitcoin company, a platform in the United States. So we're very happy to be partnering with them. We want to thank them for believing in our vision and for their trust.
Really cool. We have been entrepreneurs for a really long time, and we did multiple startups, Bitcoin startups before in Montreal, and it didn't work necessarily as expected. But what do you think went well this time that we actually had this big race? So what was the process when you started talking with early riders, and why do you think that they trusted us with that big amount of money?
Well, I think at this point we've gained the reputation and the experience that's required to manage such endeavor. I believe that when we had Verify, although we were ambitious and hardworking, we just didn't have the maturity that's required to be in this position. And maybe the timing was better, but in the end, if you don't have the right character to lead this mission, I don't think you have what it takes. So I think they were able to see that on us. They were able to see that not only we had built this experience and this maturity, but also we had a big and good understanding of our market, specifically Mexico. I spent more than 4 years living in Mexico now, more than now 16 months researching this topic, full time talking to users, developing products, talking to competitors, and just analyzing every single bit of question that you could have on this topic. So I think they were able to see that. I had also met Michael Tanguma a couple of years back when he was working at Unchained, and I was still working at Verify. I think we were exploring the Unchained product when it came out, so I had like a call with him, and he did a demo of that product then. So when we started talking, he was like Gustavo, I remember you from back then, right? So there was this connection as well. So and I think the last point here that was also very important is that through the conversations we had with them, I learned a lot about their vision regarding multi-institution custody, and it kind of very much resonated with me. I've been a self-custody proponent my whole life. And for me, at the same time, I knew that some users are just not capable of doing self custody. Just 2 weeks ago, we talked to a lady that has lost a ton of Bitcoin. Um, and she's been in it for a long time, so you'd think that maybe people would get it, but at this point, I just think that some people are just not comfortable with technology and they would rather trust a system. So how can we build a system that doesn't have a single point of failure? And that's what multi-institution custody is to me. Also a big thing that impacted this thinking was reading the Bitcoin Policy Institute recommendations for Bitcoin state treasuries, where they say if you're a US state and you're going to hold millions to billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin, why would you just choose a single custodian? Why not leverage multi institution custody so that your wealth can be distributed across multiple institutions to remove any single point of failure? So, all of that together, the maturity we've gained, the understanding of our market, the previous connection with early writers, and the shared belief in the same future, I think all of that together made it that this partnership was meant to happen.
Great. Maybe some people are gonna ask themselves because we started many years ago as Verify, and one of our core services was was helping investors, Bitcoin investors, to self-custody the proper way. We started doing multi-sigs when it was still really complicated, even more than now. And we have been pushing for this way of guarding your Bitcoin for a really long time. Do you think it's incompatible with multi-institution custody, or not necessarily? Or what do you think? How do you manage both messages that we had for a really long time, and now kind of a new vision on how people should custody?
That's definitely an important question because it is tricky to manage at the same time both messages. But obviously, I'm still a big self custody proponent. I still use the same products I used back then. Still a big cold card fan, and I still push these ideas through my other job where I write at the Bitcoin Optech newsletter, and when we talk about Bitcoin custody, Bitcoin self custody, and other technological developments, and also through my effort as BitDev's lead in Mexico City. But how can we, I think that the answer really resides to there is no one single perfect answer. Most people that adopt multi-institution custody also have a self-custody stash. Just somewhere, some sorts, because it's all about managing risk, right? So multi-institution custody is about distributing risk across multiple custodians. So it just makes sense to distribute as well your Bitcoin through different methods. Some in self-custody, some using this multi-institution custodian. So let's say take my life as an example. I have personal Bitcoin. I have also company, the Bitcoin inside my startup. It's very different how well we'll manage the Bitcoin that is only for my possession versus the Bitcoin in my organization. Why? Because in my organization, there's other stakeholders such as you and our co-founders, right? So we got to find a solution for us to manage the expectation of all stakeholders and not to rely on a single point of failure of, let's say, me as the single custodian. So that's why, in my case, that's how I envision it. But everybody has a different situation, and what we want to provide to people in Mexico and in Latin America is a trusted partner, someone they can come to see and who can help them along the path of all the questions they have, all the needs they have. Will be there for them, and if they want to do self custody with all their stash or just a portion of their stash, they can trust us with helping them with that. But if they want to do multi-institution custody, because look, I don't know, I don't really trust myself around technology, a customer might say, then we'll be able to help them with just that and anything in between.
Great. But anyone that is listening to the podcast and didn't see the video, Gustavo showed like a bunch of cold cards in his hand when he talked about being a fan of self custody. So just for anyone just listening to the audio, can you please tell me how do you think the needs of, well, more like the needs of security in Latam in Mexico are different? One of the main questions people ask me whenever I say that I moved to Mexico is always, is it secure? So obviously there are some challenges, definitely. How do you think that applies for a Bitcoin holder in Mexico, a Bitcoin investor in Mexico, and how MIC, how the multi-institution custody model can help with that?
Certainly. So I mean, I live right now. I'm in Canada because I have a little celebration going on now that I've succeeded in these goals. So I came to see my family. But normally I live in Mexico City, and you do too. And we know, like, we've never experienced any issue living there, right? Because we live in great neighborhoods. We're part of the privileged people of this country. Most people don't have that experience. We also have, we're also not in traditional brick and mortar businesses where we can be vulnerable to physical threats, right? We're not in the public eye that much. So, but however, most people in Mexico don't have the opportunity, the chance to live in such safe areas. And the people who are very wealthy have a lot of threats against them, right? Because some people are looking to extort them or to kidnap a dear one of them to be able to get some money from them. So a very common story in Mexico is you're out and you're in traffic, maybe between two cities or just between two neighborhoods, and then someone pulls up in a motorcycle with a pistol, and they're like, "Give me everything you have." And not only give me your watch and your wallet, but take out your phone, go on your finance app, and send me some money, right? So of course, as technology moves forward and as you can secure your money in better ways, let's say not have it literally on you, well, the attackers also develop better understanding of how it works, and they literally tell you to make a bank transfer to them. In that moment, if you were using multi-institution custody or any form of distributed Bitcoin custody, you could just tell him, hey, I cannot give you my Bitcoin. Maybe you have a little under duress stash, maybe you have 5% of your stash, 5K, just, hey, take this. Don't bother me, right? Maybe you give him that. But most of your stash is protected because Bitcoin's innovation is that it allows to distribute the access to the Bitcoin programmatically and through the direct protocol, right? This is very different from how banks work. Bitcoin actually has a built-in mechanism called multi-signature schemes that allow to distribute the access. So multi-institution custody is simply leveraging an inherent part of Bitcoin's protocol. So that's the case of armed robbery, but you could see how that expands to kidnappings. Just in Mexico City alone, about 2 people are kidnapped every day for their belongings. It usually resolves within 48 hours by a family member making a transfer of $50,000, but even then, you could also just have more protection on your wealth through these advanced methods for all these different threats that are a reality in Mexico for someone that grew up in Canada, such as us. Well, when we came, it was kind of a shock, although it doesn't hurt us directly. You know that it's out, that threat is out there. So when we talk to customers, we gotta have the solutions for those problems.
Yeah, that's great. Maybe we shouldn't scare our listeners too much. You should come to Mexico City. It's an amazing city, but yeah, definitely the risks are different. But it's also starting in way more other countries. We heard about situation in France, in the UK, and even Canada. Even some people close to us that got kidnapped or whatever. So it's not gonna only happen in Mexico. I think it's happening everywhere, so people should be worried about it. I think we kind of covered all the security aspect of it, and I think we're gonna learn a lot as we go along the way. So, this is not a resolved issue necessarily. So we're gonna be delivering a lot of different updates about that in the coming months. But outside of the security aspect of holding Bitcoin with a custodian versus holding it yourself, can you talk about like the advantages of financialization of Bitcoin, such as collateralized loan or anything related to this that can also be a big advantage for example, a corporation that holds Bitcoin with in such a manner?
Totally. I mean, there's nothing more that I wish that like native non-custodial lending protocols arrive to Bitcoin in a trustless and permissionless manner. But the reality is that we're just not there yet. We might be at some point with ARC and new developments like that. But today, if you want to take a loan against your Bitcoin, you cannot do it if your Bitcoin stash is in self custody. Some people market it that way. I've looked at the science behind it. There's always trust at the end. So I think multi-institution custody allows an investor to access all these additional financial products, such as taking a loan on a Bitcoin collateralized loan, accessing insurance on their Bitcoin, even setting up inheritance or estate planning strategy for their Bitcoin. So we see that OnRamp Bitcoin already offers this, and through our partnership with OnRamp and all the portfolio companies of the Early Riders family, well, we believe we can also offer these services to our customers in Mexico and in Latin America. It's gonna be, it's gonna be a lot of work. We're starting small, but I think a year from now, you could definitely see Aureo having all these features on its platform, allowing investors in Mexico and in other countries in Latin America to buy Bitcoin, whether it's $1,000 to $10 million, custody it through multi-institution custody, even distributed in a global, multi-jurisdictional way with additional security protocols and features, taking a collateralized loan out of that Bitcoin and having pesos or dollars to be able to live off that Bitcoin, and then even have that Bitcoin protected through insurance. And God forbid something happens to you, you can also give you we can enable your beneficiaries to get access through it after through your inheritance plan, right? So all of these financial services can be built on top of multi-institution custody, and we believe in the end MIC, multi-institution custody, is the only respectable way for a self-custody proponent like myself to do custody, right? I even heard this from many others that are in the self custody space saying, I gotta hand it to you guys. This actually provides the right balance.
And we also speak personally quite a lot about the different technologies in the future that will make it even more flexible. So the other day you told me that, perhaps in the future it will be possible to have your own self-custody setup. But in the case if you die or if somebody manages miraculously to steal, to do like a 2 out of 3 multisig and break your security setup, the only direction or the only address where he can send the Bitcoin will be to a multi-institutional custody setup. Basically, in the worst case possible, you hold your keys yourself, but it falls back to a solution such as what we want to offer. Can you talk a bit like what excites you in terms of the covenants or any other Bitcoin technology that can be used in the future for such things? Or maybe it's just too far away, so we shouldn't necessarily count on that to increase the security of such systems. So
I mean, just today using Taproot and CSV and CLV, check sequence verify and check log time verify, which are the standard scripts for time locks. You can build a covenant, like a covenant-less vault model where you replicate a sort of vault that you would need covenants, but without the covenants, you can do that today, and you can use that with, okay, it's in my self custody, but as a fallback, let's say it's collaborative custody with a chosen delay, let's say 15 days. So I cannot spend that money for 15 days. But after a year, it falls back with just me in self custody. And after 3 years, it falls back under a custodian. And it could fall in because maybe you lost your keys. And it could even fall back to a multi institution custody a path, right? So these things are already possible today. I'm obviously excited about what I think will happen is that covenants will arrive to Bitcoin, probably through a mix of CTV plus CSFS, which are like the conservative covenant proposals. I'm patient, I don't think we need that today, but I do think, like Segwit and Taproot, it makes sense to add these. However, I'm already also excited about things happening today, such as the launch of Arc only a couple days ago. I believe it was last week, which is a new layer 2 on Bitcoin that allows for a better payment experience, even smart contracts on top of Bitcoin through a sort of virtual environment. But I'm also excited about Spark, which is a state chain that was built by the Lightspark team. And I like what I like those new layer two designs. I would tell people to be wary because some layer two designs are definitely not to be trusted. They use false marketing and they're deceptive, but there are many cool stuff such as Arc and Spark. And finally, I think that also, you can, for other topics, I don't want to talk just about that, but for other topics, I advise everyone to look at the Bitcoin Optic newsletter, which I'm a contributor to, and where we cover most of the big technical news on Bitcoin, particularly related to the Lightning Network and to Bitcoin Core. But we also cover new research ideas, new services and client software. And I'm also very excited about all the new startups and all the new financial products being built on Bitcoin. I think we're in very exciting times for whoever is bullish or negative about Bitcoin. I would advise them to study more, to try to build something, because they if you just want to invest in Bitcoin, you have other things to do, that's fine too. But if you are actually interested in Bitcoin, in building on Bitcoin, there's just so much to do on. And please send me a message. When people send me a message, they're like, I have this idea. I usually just share to them. I've thought about so many business ideas related to Bitcoin. I usually just share to them my private notes. I'm like, dude, I have another startup, but you go ahead. Here are my notes. Here's exactly. I actually researched how to do this license in Canada. Here are my notes. I can even present you to a lawyer. Here's the API spec. I like, go ahead. I love for there to be more Bitcoin projects. I think people should reach out to me if they want to talk about any of these ideas. I would be happy to help.
Great. By the way, this is 100% unscripted conversation, so we really even didn't brief what we're going to talk about. We just start talking. And that's kind of my goal with this podcast that I'm going to do, is just to make it sound as natural as possible and just like a friendly conversation. So you mentioned different things that I actually want to dig in deeper. One thing, the first thing, is that you said you're the writer of the newsletter Bitcoin Optic, which is an excellent the best probably newsletter for Bitcoin nerds that actually want to work as developers, even work on the Bitcoin core or anything else related to Bitcoin. So you obviously know a lot about it. I know that you're a developer, but you don't necessarily code. But one thing that I want to ask is basically, for all we want to build in Mexico, we're going to require some developing talent, and you have been also running the bit devs in Mexico City at La Casa de Satoshi, which is basically our community space for organizing meetups in Mexico City, but also a co-working space and our HQ, basically. But one thing we realize is that the people attending the bit devs are not necessarily developers. And so we have to kind of tone down the not the quality, but at least the level of complexity of the issues that are being discussed. So there's definitely a thriving Bitcoin community in Mexico City, but there's not as many developers that are, you know, invested into the Bitcoin protocol or that are really knowledgeable about it. What's the solution? Obviously, we want to hire local. We want to hire people close to us to make this work, not only for economical reasons, but also because we want to be closer to the culture of the clients we want to serve in general. So what's the solution for that? Do you think we're going to have to hire abroad, or we kind of need to start a movement here? Uh, just general thoughts about the Bitcoin developers community in Mexico.
The first question is, what brings developers to Bitcoin in a third world country? Opportunities, jobs, income, right? Mexico is a poor country where if you make $3,000 a month, you are in the 1% of the country in income, at least with through the official numbers, right? There's a big informal economy, so in reality it's different. But just to my first point is that we gotta create jobs, we gotta create opportunities, we gotta inspire people to launch their own startups as well, to come join and build on open source software, to get a grant for that, so So I think that's the first step. I think if you go to a Ethereum meetup in Mexico City, there's a bunch of developers, right? Or even if you go to like I don't even know what the name of these altcoin chains are, but if you go to like a coin that is like top 60 in coin market cap, they do a meetup in Mexico City and it's full of people and they all work there, right? Because these companies, these protocols, these altcoins, the shitcoins, they all have a lot of money, so they're able to pay people. Bitcoin companies, they don't have a scamming model that is that easily funded or that is that profitable, so they just don't hire that many people. So I think the first step is actually building profitable Bitcoin companies that create jobs and opportunities for people and communities that inspire people to launch their own projects and to join existing projects. So, and I think that's what we're doing, like I said, Satoshi. I think that that's what they're doing in Guadalajara too, in Merida, in Monterrey now, and in other parts of the country. The second thing is that Mexico's a big country. So, I mean, I get messages from people saying, hey, I live in the middle of nowhere, 6 hours from Mexico City. I would love to go to you guys' meetups, but it's so far. So that's also a big factor to consider. And finally, I mean, I think we got to just take a more preemptive approach. Probably we should go to a university near our house and give flyers and say, hey, we're gonna be hiring for developers, but we expect everyone to know about Bitcoin. So come to our BitDevs meetup, learn about Bitcoin, and maybe 20 people come and maybe two stay and maybe one becomes passionate about it and actually transforms their life through it, but we gotta start somewhere. I think I always tell people it's like you gotta actually just build jobs and opportunities if you want to get people to transition into this industry or into this way of life. So we will be doing our part there, but I'm excited also to see new Bitcoin only companies joining the country. And all of these companies, they're all our competitors, and we have issue with many of them. But I'm still happy that they're here, and I can mention them all. There's Rayo, who has Bitcoin ATMs, and they also have like a Lightning wallet where you can also, I believe, you can also buy and sell. There's Yopaki, which I worked and collaborated with them for a while, and they're very cool guys, and they're doing cool stuff as well. Capital X, who now called Arcadia, they do cool stuff too, and now Bull Bitcoin too. So there's more and more Bitcoin only companies. There's gonna be more Bitcoin jobs, more Bitcoin developers. So just compare it to how when we arrived to this country and we started doing meetups in Querétaro 4 years ago, how it's evolved since then. It's definitely been a long way, and we're definitely seeing results. So I'm quite optimistic about the future.
Yeah, me as well. I think it's just about, baking a big pie altogether or your own big pie because the adoption in Mexico is still marginal and there's a lot of work to do. So definitely encouraging people to learn more about Bitcoin by kind of not necessarily giving them a promise they will find a job, but if you start learning and start being involved in the community and trying to maybe contribute to open source project or doing some education content, that's how you eventually get into uh, getting a Bitcoin job. And that's how we did it, right? Back in Montreal, we proposed ourselves to organize the Bitcoin Montreal meetup. We organized it for years without any financial retribution, just because we loved it and we loved learning along the way. So this is definitely something anyone that is interested should do. And you more on the business side of things. You said like you're ready to share your business ideas to anyone that wants to do something. And I love that. I love that. Because why keep it for yourself? If it's just gonna not be used and not give any value, if it can give value to somebody else, that's good. And that's also something we discuss more also for our own business strategies. So when you started the process, it was kind of difficult to navigate the legal context, all the licenses. You've been told in order to start an exchange, it requires a fintech license, which costs hundreds of thousands of dollars. But in the end, we found out that it's not true. So how many startups are not getting initiated just because a lawyer tells them yeah, you need this license and or you need this, but in the end, it's not true. They just want to get a bunch of money out of them. So you know, tell us what you can about our legal strategy, how we did it. Why we got the Bitcoin license in El Salvador. If people want to start something, how they can do it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's not a secret because if you read on our terms and conditions, you'll actually just find our strategy written. But basically what happened is that it was a matter of timing as much as it was a matter of just the way things are in Mexico and Latin America. So first of all, timing, regulation and enforcement and supervision of these activities in Mexico and Latin America is in constant evolution. I think Mexico is probably the best example of that. Like it was in 2018 where the Congress declared Bitcoin as or crypto as something that could get regulated. It's like, this is legal. It was legal before. We had never said it was legal. Now we say it's legal. Immediately, the central bank was like, seems like you guys want to regulate it. I don't like it. I want to do a CBDC. So in 2019, central bank said financial institutions are banned from using Bitcoin. The Congress was like, but we just passed this fintech law, which was meant to regulate exchanges. What does that mean if they're now banned from using crypto? They're like, yeah, I don't care. I don't want companies to start being exchanges in Mexico. So then it created a gray zone where the fiscal authorities, the SAT, answered in 2020, okay, well, if you guys are not going to regulate it and there's still going to be exchanges, but they're not going to be financial institutions, but let's say a foreign exchange could offer its services or a non-financial institution could offer crypto services, Bitcoin services, then I'm going to regulate it under the money laundering prevention law. And that's how Bitcoin is regulated today. It's regulated under the money laundering prevention law, under the SAT. You got to file a physical notice to the SAT saying in a specific format. So it's advisable to do it with a lawyer. There's multiple lawyers that know how to do it. And you got to tell them, hey, I'm going to be operating an exchange in Mexico for buying and selling Bitcoin. And I'm going to report to you every month. That's what the fiscal authorities want. They want the information. So that's how all platforms are regulated in Mexico. They all operate under the SAT, also called a sujeto obligado, or in English would be obligated subject operating a vulnerable activity of virtual assets. And every month, you got to file some information to the authorities, such as all users that have done more than this volume and also all suspicious activities that you've witnessed. You got to also follow KYC and AML controls, just the standard stuff. And that's how Bitcoin and crypto is regulated in Mexico. When we got here, it was around 2021, 2022. So the law had the new things were just in movement, you know? I think even we started looking into expanding a previous company we were working at into Mexico. We were looking at it in 2021. So the law had just changed before that. So if you were a lawyer that wasn't looking at exactly what was happening in that sector, you didn't know how it was regulated. You just assume, well, there's this fintech law, it has to be within that because that was the initial goal of the fintech law. But you didn't know the nuance. No, actually, there was a reaction to it from the central bank and then from the SAT, which actually changed things. Today, it's very different. Now, when you talk to people, to lawyers, now everybody knows. It just seems like over the past 2 years, everything flipped. It went from nobody knowing to now everybody knows. So now it's not a secret at all. So that's the way you do it. And through another strategy, you could just do that. But another strategy is to actually set up your exchange platform in another country, have a headquarters where the Bitcoin exchange or the crypto exchange occurs in another jurisdiction. For us, that is El Salvador. So every time a Bitcoin user wants to buy Bitcoin with us in Mexico or sell, they gotta enter in a contractual relationship with our El Salvador entity. And our El Salvador entity is the one offering Bitcoin services in Mexico. Then we also have a Mexican entity that, like I said, is registered and reports to the authorities in Mexico, but that's not who the contractual relationship with sits. It's with the El Salvador exchange and custody platform. So that's our setup. That's a common strategy. At this point, it's no longer a secret. I would actually now people are actually hitting me up and asking if I can introduce them to our lawyers. I do it with pleasure. I don't think that should be the way people are held out from this market. But yeah, and the second point is that that's just the way things and business is done in Latin America. It's run through obscurity, red taping, confusion. Sometimes it's not clear what the law is. There's way more loopholes than there is in the first world. So that's just the nature of the way of business here too.
Yeah, I think we actually got lucky because it didn't take that much time. We heard other stories where it took way longer to obtain everything to start operating, but definitely there is a change coming from Canada where, like, for example, just registering a company is quite easy. You just have to go on a certain web portal, pay a few $100, and bam, you have a company. It was a little bit complicated, but probably that's why there is a big part of the economy that remains in the gray area. But yeah, definitely some learnings, but it gives you a thicker skin for the future. So maybe without revealing too many secrets, can you tease us for the next plans for Aureo in the upcoming months? What are our intentions, and yeah, what's the project? What's the next big thing we're gonna announce?
Yeah, I mean, right now, if you go on aureobitcoin.com, you will see that we advertise you can buy, sell, and we also have private client services. So the sell is just the traditional Swapito product where you can instantly convert Bitcoin to pesos. The buy for now is a manual process where you tell us, hey, I want to buy this amount of Bitcoin, and we jump in a conversation with you. We can even jump in a call. We can even do a physical reunion. If you want, we can help you set up a wallet. We can answer any Bitcoin questions you have, and we can deliver the Bitcoin to your wallet within seconds or minutes at probably the lowest spread in the market, which is 1%, and including all fees, no hidden fees, no deposit, no trading fees, just a 1% spread. So that's what we have right now. And also for private clients that want to buy large sums, you can come to see us. We can build a custody and inheritance strategy for you, leveraging both self custody and multi institution custody solutions. We can execute large transactions with you. Plus, we can answer any other technical or financial question you might have about Bitcoin. So that's what we are right now, a white glove platform to buy and sell and provide custody advice for customers in Mexico. And this is all done through our new legal structure that is fully licensed and regulated. What's next? So the first thing that's next that we thought we would have by now, but you know how it is, things always take time, more time than usual. What's next is adding the buy Bitcoin automated feature where you don't have to contact us. It would be completely self-serve. Some customers still prefer to talk to us, and we will always provide that. But if you just want to complete an automated transaction in a second with passkey security and with Lightning and on-chain, you will be able to do that hopefully in November, maybe even in December, but definitely before the end of the year on Aureo. We think we'll have the easiest, secure, and fastest way to buy and sell Bitcoin in Mexico by the end of the year. From there, once we have that, not only through our partnership with OnRamp, not only will we like provide those MIC as a service, but we will integrate it directly on our platform, right? So a few months from now, as a Mexican investor or company, you will be able to sign up on Swapito, buy small amounts in a fast, automated way, buy large amounts in a white glove manner directly on the web platform, send it to multi institution custody, or have it as a vault with additional security protocols, or just basic custody. You will be able to take out a loan against your Bitcoin and receive a transfer of pesos in your wallet At the same time, we're working on a new license in El Salvador called like digital asset service provider license, which will allow us to offer stablecoins. So we know, although like we understand the stablecoins limits, they can be censored. It's nothing like Bitcoin. It kind of helps the fiat machine instead of fighting against it. We understand that this is just the reality of the market. At Aureo, yes, we want to believe in this. We believe in this Bitcoin future, and we're pushing towards that. But we also understand we're realists, and we understand our market needs. So we will provide stable coins as well. You will be able to buy and sell USDT, and hopefully by the end of next year, we will be expanding down south. We think we can offer this service across the region in Latin America for both investors and companies. And from there, just scale it up into institutional markets as well and add additional, become the top premium white glove financial platform in this Bitcoin future for Latin America.
Awesome. That's really exciting. I'm really glad to be part in a startup again with you on this new journey. So I'm really impatient when everything will be live so we can start really pushing Bitcoin for Mexico and beyond. To finish, maybe on a lighter note, some people have been maybe thinking about moving away from Canada, from the States, from Europe, especially during the COVID times. We had many people kind of asking us how did we did it, and after the heat calmed down, they kind of abandoned the idea. But maybe this kind of event can happen again. So just curious, like on a personal note, how it has been for you to move to Mexico culturally. I mean, obviously you're Peruvian, so you already knew how to speak English, so that was a bit easier to adapt. But anything you have to say about Mexico, what you like about it, what was something unexpected for you? Just curious about how you feel here, and yeah, just personal thing.
Yeah, for sure. Well, to be honest, to me, I have a very different experience. So I think you should add about your experience in this podcast too. And by the way, I mean, I want to thank you not only for this podcast, but for all the work you do and for always believing in me. I think, and I mean, for your friendship too in general. But it just means a lot to me, all of that. But to get back to the topic, what it meant, how it felt to me to move from Canada. I mean, I lived 8 years in Peru. I was a very privileged person. Both my parents were doctors. So I kind of understood the upper class lifestyle in Latin America. And that's probably, if you don't come from Latin America, that's probably going to be your biggest shocker. How where it's a society that's run very differently than the United States and Canada and Europe. It all depends which part of society you're in. Are you in the underclass, the middle class, or the upper class, right? And even then, there's additional nuances and categories. So I lived 8 years in Peru, then I lived 17 years in Canada in Montreal, and then I live 4 years in Mexico. So at first, it was more of a shocker. With time, it has just become me reuniting with my Latino side, something that was inside me that I almost didn't know I had. Um, excuse me for that. I got reunited with this past that I had with the origins. So to me, it just feels like I've come back home after after a long time in Canada. I've you know how it is in Canada. It's like do immigrants ever feel as Canadians? You were actually born in Canada, but your parents were Polish, and in some way, I think you feel more Polish than Canadian. So I didn't feel particularly Peruvian because I left there, but I never felt particularly Canadian. I guess I felt more Quebecois or Montrealese than Canadian, you know? So I guess my identity turned around that. So I guess for me, that was the experience. It was more reuniting with my Latin American, Spanish speaking origins, although it was not Peru, Mexico, and Peru share a lot of history and culture. It was definitely a shift to At the beginning, I was living like a tourist, and now I'm living more like an upper class Latino. There's definitely been a shift there. But honestly, now I cannot go back to, I'll have a hard time going back to living in Canada, right? The weather, the access to the services, being able to take Ubers multiple times a day without thinking of how much it costs, being able to dine out multiple times a day without thinking of it. I haven't cooked a meal in months. I personally hate cooking. Some people like it, but having people not having to worry about driving, cooking, cleaning because there's people, I can have people do all that for me. I mean, that's honestly one of the biggest advantages for my lifestyle because it can allow me to focus on working on stuff that I'm actually good at and that is actually worth my time. And I think it's also very important to always treat every service provider in Mexico with a ton of respect. I try to do it as much as I can. Everybody that helps me out with any duties or chores that I need. I'm extremely grateful for their help, and that's what, if we can bring something of value to Mexico, it's that. It's respect for other people. It's it's trying to build a better society, because that's not what society has been used to in Mexico. So as Canadians, that's how the value we can bring here, and also create jobs, create opportunities, transmit ideas, create organizations. I think that's what we're doing. But I would like to hear from you. What was the your experience moving from Canada to Mexico?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. As you said, like I always felt more Polish than Canadian, or at least as you said, Montrealer. But when I came to Mexico, I always felt super welcome, and everybody around us is super welcoming. I didn't feel once somebody didn't want me here. It doesn't matter if it's in a small village meeting friends of my girlfriends or people in the Bitcoin community or just meeting somebody at a bar when somebody hears my story. And I think especially that at this point I speak pretty good Spanish. People really appreciate that and respect it. And the people that are more business oriented, but they want to see foreigners coming to Mexico and being involved actively in the business world. And so, personally, always felt really welcome. And I think there is some resemblance between Polish people and Mexican people because they also have a lot of family values. Historically, culturally, they're a Catholic nation, so you can definitely see a lot of resemblance. I love to party here, always great party. People are super nice in general. And as you said, there's some flaws in the country, but it's not necessarily about fixing the country, it's about transforming it. And everybody that stays here long enough, if you love Mexico, Mexico will love you back. So that's how I feel in general. But this is my podcast, so it's not about me. It's about interviewing you. But yeah, I think you have a great response. Enjoying what this country has to offer. Definitely the you know, economic arbitrage. Arbitrage is definitely a good argument why somebody should do it, but that's not enough to make a new life, right? It's about enjoying the culture, enjoying and the people, and wanting to make a change. So yeah, I think that sums it up.
For sure. I mean, I'm in Canada right now, and I can feel it's different. It's nice to to enjoy maybe the seasonal change here. It's nice to see the color of the leaves, but there's definitely a different culture, and I really like Mexican culture. I really like even though there's so many hardships, people are very happy. You have joyful. You can just, it kind of feels, it's very surrealistic too, and I like that side. But sometimes like I kind of feel like it's a bit of a movie. It's like you just walk outside and people are singing, and there's a pharmacy with a mascot that's dancing reggaeton. It's so random, but there's people trying to sell you stuff, but they're making jokes. So it's a joyful society despite its troubles, right? Without talking about its beautiful nature and all its climates and all it has to offer there, without talking about the economical arbitrage and the good lifestyle it provides for me, without talking about his history, and its archaeology and all just so many stuff. We could do a whole episode on just my interest in Bitcoin. I'm sorry, in Mexico culture and history, but I guess this was more focused on our project, on my life, and on our Bitcoin interests.
Yeah, we'll definitely have other occasions to do it. So yeah, anyone listening, you can come to Mexico, not only to Mexico City, but on the beach, to the mountains, everywhere. There's a Bitcoin community almost now. And I'm probably going to be interviewing these people in the next episode. So you'll discover more. And you can use Aureo, obviously, to pay with Bitcoin anywhere, thanks to our Bitcoin to pesos upfront. So you can be really comfortable as a Bitcoiner here. So yeah, let's finish here and plan another episodes in the next few months where we're gonna have more to share. So thank you, Gustavo. That was maybe your last word.
Thank you, Maciej. Yeah, I mean, I think if you are interested, please follow me on Twitter or Audio Bitcoin on Twitter, and my account is Gustavo JFE. So Gustavo Jose Flores Echaiz. So Gustavo JFE to stay updated uh, on everything we're doing. We're also investing a lot of resources into creating educational content in both English and Spanish. So I think that's going to be very exciting too. But in general, we just have a ton of stuff prepared for you guys, and we'll be launching these out in the next couple of weeks.
Perfect. So this was the first episode of the Bitcoin Latam Report, and I was the host, Maciej Cepnik. Thank you so much, and see you next time.